I never imagined my life could take such a sharp turn. That evening started like any other, but it ended in a way that shattered my world. The memory of walking into my own home, only to be greeted by the sight of my wife, Laura, entwined in another man's arms, is seared into my mind. It was a Tuesday, and I had left work early, hoping to surprise her with a romantic dinner. Instead, it was I who was surprised. As I pushed open the bedroom door, the scene that greeted me was something out of a nightmare. There they were, Laura and some stranger in our bed, laughing and oblivious to my presence. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I thought I might collapse. The shock and disbelief were overwhelming, but I stayed silent and unnoticed. I closed the door as quietly as I had opened it, retreating from the scene that would forever change my life. My mind raced, grappling with what I had just witnessed. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with all my heart, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. Anger and sorrow battled within me, but amidst the emotional chaos, a cold, calculated clarity began to emerge. As I drove away from the house, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel, I knew that this wasn't something I could confront her about immediately. No, I needed to gather my thoughts, to plan my next move. I would not let my emotions get the best of me. If Laura thought she could get away with this, she was sorely mistaken. I was determined to make her pay for this betrayal. Over the next few weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I installed hidden cameras, collected screenshots of incriminating messages, and recorded phone conversations. Laura had no idea that her every move was being documented, that her secret was no longer safe. Each piece of evidence I gathered was a nail in the coffin of her deceit, and I took a grim satisfaction in compiling it all. One evening, my friend Mark came over. He had always been a good-sounding board for my troubles. As we sat in my living room, I decided to confide in him. "Mark, I need to tell you something," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Laura has been cheating on me." His eyes widened in shock. "What? Are you sure?" I nodded, showing him some of the evidence I had collected. "I've been gathering proof for weeks. I can't believe she did this to me." Mark shook his head, anger flashing in his eyes. "That's unbelievable. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make her regret it," I said, my voice cold and resolute. During the day, I played the part of the unsuspecting husband, but at night, I pored over the evidence, perfecting my plan for revenge. I consulted with a divorce attorney, ensuring that when the time came, I would be ready to strike. My goal was simple: to destroy Laura's reputation and ensure she felt the full weight of her actions financially. Finally, the day arrived when I felt prepared. Armed with a meticulously crafted dossier of her infidelity, I began to execute my plan. Anonymously, I sent packages of evidence to her closest friends, family, and even her colleagues. The whispers and glances that followed Laura everywhere she went were only the beginning of her unraveling. Simultaneously, I froze our joint bank accounts and moved my assets to a secure, separate account. Laura's carefree days of financial security were over. Every step I took was calculated to maximize her downfall, to strip away everything she had taken for granted. When I finally confronted her, the look on her face was priceless. She had no idea I knew, and the realization of the depth of her betrayal and the consequences it brought left her speechless. "How could you do this to me, Laura?" I demanded, throwing the evidence onto the table between us. She stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know what to say, Jake. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied coldly. "I've already filed for divorce. Here are the papers." Laura stared at the documents, her hands shaking. "Jake, please. We can work this out. It was a mistake." "A mistake? You made that mistake repeatedly. There's nothing left to work out." I watched as her world crumbled. The woman who once held my heart had destroyed our bond, but in doing so, she had unknowingly forged a stronger, more resolute version of me. This is just the beginning of my new chapter, one where I move forward, leaving the wreckage of her betrayal behind. The days that followed our confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions and meticulous planning. As much as it hurt, there was a certain satisfaction in watching Laura scramble to piece together her shattered life. She had no idea that this was just the beginning of the storm I was about to unleash. I continued to collect more evidence, ensuring that every detail of her betrayal was documented. The hidden cameras captured her furtive meetings with her lover, whose name I learned was Ryan. I recorded every interaction, every whispered conversation, and every secret rendezvous. I felt like a hunter, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One evening, as I reviewed the latest footage, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey Jake, how are you holding up?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm managing," I replied, "but there's still a lot to do." "Listen, if you need any help, just let me know. I can't believe she did this to you." "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. There is something you can help with. I need to spread the word, but it has to be done discreetly." Mark was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. "All right, tell me what you need." I explained my plan to him, outlining how I intended to send the evidence to everyone in Laura's social circle. Mark agreed to help, and we devised a strategy to ensure the packages were delivered anonymously. With his support, I felt more confident than ever. A few days later, the first wave of evidence began to reach its targets. Laura's best friend, Megan, was the first to call. "Jake, what is this?" Megan's voice was a mixture of shock and disbelief. "I got a package with photos and messages. Is this real?" "It's real, Megan. Laura's been cheating on me with a guy named Ryan. I thought you should know." Megan was silent for a moment. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I had no idea. What are you going to do?" "I've already started divorce proceedings. This is just the beginning." As more people received the evidence, Laura's carefully constructed world began to crumble. Her friends turned against her. Her family was in shock, and her colleagues whispered behind her back. The whispers grew louder, spreading like wildfire throughout her professional and personal life. One evening, Laura confronted me again, her eyes red from crying. "Jake, please, we need to talk." I looked at her coldly. "What is there to talk about, Laura? You made your choices. I know I messed up, but this is too much. You're ruining my life." I felt a pang of guilt but quickly pushed it aside. "You ruined our marriage, Laura. I'm just making sure you face the consequences." She stared at me, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. "You can't do this. It's cruel." "Was it not cruel when you brought Ryan into our home? Into our bed?" I snapped, my voice rising. "You didn't think about the consequences then, did you?" Laura had no response. She turned and walked away, the weight of her actions finally sinking in. I watched her go, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. She had to understand the gravity of what she had done, and if this was the only way, so be it. With Laura's reputation in tatters, I turned my attention to the financial aspect of my plan. I met with my lawyer, a sharp and ruthless woman named Rebecca, to discuss the next steps. "Jake, we've frozen the joint accounts and moved your assets as planned. Laura will have a hard time accessing any funds," Rebecca said, flipping through her notes. "Good. I want to make sure she doesn't get a penny more than she deserves," I replied. Rebecca looked at me, her expression serious. "You know, Jake, this kind of vengeance can take a toll on you too. Are you sure you want to go through with all of this?" I nodded firmly. "Yes, she needs to understand the consequences of her actions. This is the only way." Rebecca sighed but didn't argue. "All right, well, proceed as planned." In the days that followed, I watched as Laura struggled to maintain her composure. She tried to put on a brave face, but it was clear that the weight of her actions was bearing down on her. The life she had built was falling apart, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. One night, as I sat alone in my new apartment, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the anger, the meticulous planning. It had consumed me. But now, as I looked toward the future, I realized that this chapter of my life was coming to an end. Laura's betrayal had forged a new path for me, one that was free from deceit and filled with new possibilities. This was just the beginning of my journey. The storm had passed, and now it was time to rebuild. With Laura's reputation in ruins, it was time to move forward with the next phase of my plan, hitting her where it would hurt the most, her finances. As I sat in my lawyer Rebecca's office, I felt a mixture of anticipation and determination. This part of the plan required precision and an understanding of our financial landscape, and I was ready. "All right, Jake, let's go over everything one more time," Rebecca said, her tone professional and direct. "We've already frozen the joint accounts and moved your assets. Now we need to ensure that Laura is left with as little as possible." I nodded, leaning forward. I want to make sure she feels the impact. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. Rebecca handed me a stack of documents. Here's the financial breakdown. We've separated all the assets and ensured that what was rightfully yours remains with you. The next step is to leverage any debts and liabilities in the divorce proceedings. We spent the next few hours meticulously planning every detail. Rebecca's expertise was invaluable, and by the end of our meeting, I felt confident that Laura would not walk away unscathed. I left her office with a sense of purpose, ready to execute the next steps. At home, I began to gather all the necessary financial documents. I reviewed our mortgage, credit card statements, and investments. Laura had always been reckless with money, and I knew that her spending habits would work in my favor. The more debt I could attribute to her, the less she would have in the end. One evening, as I was sorting through paperwork, my phone rang. It was Laura. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, her voice sounding more desperate than before. "What is there to talk about, Laura?" I replied coldly. "You made your bed, now lie in it. Please, just hear me out. Can we meet in person? I need to explain." I hesitated for a moment but agreed. "Fine, tomorrow evening at the park. But don't expect me to go easy on you." The next day as I walked to the park, I felt a mix of curiosity and anger. What could she possibly say to justify her actions? When I arrived, Laura was already there, looking anxious and worn out. "Jake, thank you for meeting me," she began, her eyes pleading. "Get to the point, Laura. What do you want?" I said, crossing my arms. "I know I've hurt you and I'm truly sorry. But this financial warfare, it's too much. I'll be ruined." I felt a flicker of pity, but quickly squashed it. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed me." "Jake, please. We can come to some sort of agreement, can't we? I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't destroy me financially." I stared at her, seeing the woman I once loved, now reduced to begging. It was a stark reminder of how far we had fallen. "Laura, you brought this on yourself. There's no agreement to be made. The divorce will proceed as planned." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I turned and walked away. Her apologies and pleas meant nothing to me now. She had to face the full consequences of her actions. Back home, I resumed my preparations. I contacted our mortgage company and ensured that any outstanding debts were attributed to Laura. I transferred the utilities and canceled any joint subscriptions, leaving her to deal with the fallout. Every step was calculated to maximize her discomfort and ensure that she felt the sting of her betrayal. A week later, I met with Rebecca again to finalize the divorce documents. We reviewed everything one last time, ensuring that all the financial aspects were covered. "Jake, this is a solid case," Rebecca said, her tone approving. "Laura won't be able to contest much of this. You'll come out ahead." "That's the plan," I replied, feeling a sense of closure. When the day finally arrived to submit the divorce papers, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. I knew this was the right path, but it was still a significant step. Laura had received her copy of the documents, and I knew she was struggling to comprehend the full extent of the financial blow. As I walked into the courthouse, I felt a sense of finality. This was it, the end of a chapter that had been filled with love, betrayal, and now, retribution. I handed the documents to the clerk, feeling the weight of the moment. This was the culmination of months of planning and preparation. In the days that followed, I watched as Laura tried to navigate the aftermath. Her calls became less frequent, her desperation more apparent. She was losing everything, her reputation, her financial security, and the life she had known. And as much as it pained me to see her suffer, I knew it was necessary. She had to learn that actions have consequences, and this was her lesson. One evening, Mark came over to check on me. We sat on the porch, sipping beers and reflecting on everything that had happened. "How are you holding up, Jake?" he asked, looking at me with concern. "I'm doing better, actually," I replied. "It's been tough, but I needed to do this. Laura needed to understand the impact of her actions." Mark nodded. "You've been through hell, man. But you're coming out stronger. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Mark. I couldn't have done it without your support." As we sat there, I felt a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and I was beginning to see the light on the other side. The financial assault had been a necessary step, but now it was time to focus on rebuilding my life. With Laura's betrayal behind me, I looked forward to the future with renewed hope. There was still a long road ahead, but I knew I was ready to face whatever came next. This chapter was ending, and a new one was beginning. One where I could finally move forward, free from the shadows of the past. The wheels of my plan were in full motion, and I knew the final blows to Laura's reputation were about to land. With the financial assault well underway, the next step was to ensure that her professional and social life would be just as thoroughly dismantled. It wasn't enough for her to face financial ruin. She needed to experience the same public humiliation she had inflicted on me. I started with her workplace. Laura worked as a project manager at a well-known marketing firm, and her reputation there was one of competence and reliability. I knew that revealing her infidelity would not only shock her colleagues, but also undermine her professional standing. I crafted an anonymous email, attaching select pieces of evidence that highlighted her affair without being explicit. The email was sent to her boss and several key colleagues, detailing how her indiscretions were affecting her performance at work. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee, I received a call from an unknown number. It was one of Laura's colleagues, Peter. "Jake, it's Peter from Laura's office. I don't know how to say this, but we received some disturbing information about Laura today." Feigning ignorance, I responded, "What do you mean, Peter? What happened?" There was an anonymous email sent to the office. It included some very personal information about Laura. "It's causing quite a stir here. Have you heard anything about this?" I took a deep breath, maintaining my facade. "No, I haven't. That's unfortunate. I hope she's okay." Peter sighed. "It's a mess, Jake. I just thought you should know. This could impact her career." "Thanks for letting me know, Peter. I'll try to reach out to her." I hung up, a grim satisfaction settling over me. This was exactly the reaction I had anticipated. Laura's spotless professional reputation was now tarnished, and the fallout would be significant. Later that day, Laura called me, her voice trembling with panic. "Jake, did you send something to my office?" "Why would I do that, Laura?" I replied coolly. "What happened?" "Someone sent an email to my boss and colleagues, exposing everything about my affair. My job is at risk." "Sounds like your actions are catching up with you," I said, unable to hide the bitterness in my voice. "Maybe now you'll understand the consequences of your betrayal." "Jake, please, I'm begging you. I'll lose everything." "You already lost me, Laura. This is just the beginning." I ended the call, feeling a pang of guilt but knowing it was necessary. She had to face the full weight of her actions, and this was just part of it. The following week, I turned my attention to her social circle. Laura had always been the social butterfly, hosting parties and being the center of attention. I knew that dismantling her friendships would be another powerful blow. I reached out to several of her close friends, including Megan, who had already expressed her shock and disapproval. "Megan, I think it's important that you know the full story," I said during a phone call. Laura's affair wasn't just a one-time thing. It was ongoing, and she showed no remorse. Megan was silent for a moment. "Jake, I had no idea it was this bad. She's been acting like nothing's wrong." "That's exactly the problem. She's been living a lie. I think her friends deserve to know the truth." Megan agreed, and soon, word spread throughout Laura's social circle. The whispers became louder, and the invitations she once received dwindled to nothing. Her friends began to distance themselves, shocked by her deceit and the extent of her betrayal. Laura's social life, once vibrant and full of activity, became a shadow of its former self. One evening, I received a message from an old mutual friend, David. He wanted to meet and talk about everything that had transpired. We met at a local bar, the atmosphere buzzing with chatter and clinking glasses. "Jake, man, I can't believe all this," David said, shaking his head. "Laura's been a wreck lately. She's lost so many friends over this." "I didn't want it to come to this, David, but she left me no choice," I replied, taking a sip of my drink. "She betrayed me in the worst way possible." David sighed. "I get it. I do. But seeing her like this, it's hard. She has to face the consequences, David. Maybe this will make her think twice before betraying someone again." As I left the bar, I felt a sense of closure beginning to form. Laura's social downfall was nearly complete, and I knew that the final phase of my plan was approaching. Her professional life was in shambles, her friendships were crumbling, and her financial security was gone. The woman who had betrayed me so callously was now experiencing the full weight of her actions. A few days later, I received a letter from Laura's lawyer requesting a meeting to discuss the divorce proceedings. It was time to bring everything to a head and finalize the end of our marriage. As I walked into Rebecca's office to prepare for the meeting, I felt a mix of relief and anticipation. The end was near, and I was ready to move on with my life. "Jake, we've received the response from Laura's lawyer," Rebecca said, handing me the letter. "They're requesting a mediation to settle the terms of the divorce." "Let's do it," I replied, feeling a sense of determination. "It's time to end this." The mediation was scheduled for the following week. As I prepared for the meeting, I reflected on everything that had happened. Laura's betrayal had set off a chain of events that led us to this point, and now it was time to finalize the consequences. On the day of the mediation, I walked into the room with Rebecca by my side. Laura was already there, looking defeated and worn out. Her lawyer sat beside her, a stern expression on his face. As we took our seats, the mediator began to outline the process. "Today, we are here to settle the terms of the divorce between Jake and Laura. Both parties have presented their cases, and it is now time to reach an agreement." The discussions were tense and filled with accusations. Laura's lawyer tried to paint her in a sympathetic light, but the evidence of her infidelity and reckless spending was overwhelming. Rebecca presented our case with precision, highlighting the financial and emotional toll of Laura's actions. After hours of negotiations, the terms were finally set. Laura would receive a minimal settlement, barely enough to cover her immediate expenses. The house and other major assets would remain with me. As the mediator finalized the agreement, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The meeting ended, and Laura approached me as we were leaving. "Jake, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you can find it in your heart to move past this." I looked at her, seeing the pain and regret in her eyes. "Maybe someday, Laura, but not today." With that, I walked away, ready to begin the next chapter of my life. The storm of betrayal and retribution had passed, leaving behind a clear path to the future. It was time to rebuild, to find new happiness, and to leave the shadows of the past behind. With the terms of the divorce finalized, I thought I had seen the last of Laura's deceit. But as we navigated the final stages of the legal process, it became clear that Laura was not going to go down without a fight. She had one last card up her sleeve: hidden assets. A few days after the mediation, Rebecca called me into her office with a look of concern on her face. "Jake, we've encountered a complication. It appears Laura has been less than forthcoming about her finances." I frowned, feeling a surge of anger. "What do you mean? We already went through everything." Rebecca sighed and handed me a stack of documents. "Our forensic accountant discovered several accounts and investments that Laura didn't disclose during the divorce proceedings. She's been hiding assets." I stared at the documents, feeling a mix of betrayal and determination. "So, what do we do now?" "We need to bring this to the court's attention. We can file a motion to reopen the financial settlement based on newly discovered evidence. But it will be a battle." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's do it. She's not getting away with this." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal maneuvers. Rebecca filed the necessary motions, and we gathered additional evidence of Laura's hidden assets. The court hearings were tense, with Laura's lawyer trying to dismiss our claims as baseless. But the evidence was undeniable. In one particularly heated hearing, the judge reviewed the evidence we had presented. "Mrs. Green, it appears you have failed to disclose significant assets during the divorce proceedings. Can you explain this oversight?" Laura shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Your Honor, it was never my intention to hide anything. I must have overlooked those accounts." The judge's expression hardened. "Overlooked? These are substantial amounts, Mrs. Green. I find it hard to believe this was an oversight." Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge silenced him with a stern look. "Given the evidence, I am inclined to reopen the financial settlement. Mr. Green, you will be entitled to a portion of the previously undisclosed assets." As we left the courtroom, I felt a wave of relief. Laura's deceit had been exposed, and justice was finally being served. But I knew this was just one part of the battle. We still needed to navigate the complexities of redistributing the assets. Rebecca and I worked tirelessly to ensure that I received a fair share of the hidden assets. We went through every account, every investment, and every piece of property. Laura's attempts to hide her wealth had only made her situation worse. One evening, as I reviewed the latest financial documents, I received a call from Laura. Her voice was filled with desperation. "Jake, please, can we talk?" "What is there to talk about, Laura?" I replied, my patience wearing thin. "I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong to hide those assets. But I need your help. I'm struggling, and I don't know what to do." I felt a pang of sympathy, but quickly reminded myself of the pain she had caused. "You made your choices, Laura. You need to face the consequences." "Please, Jake, I'm begging you." I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "I'm sorry, Laura, this is out of my hands now. The court will decide what's fair." The call ended, and I felt a mixture of sadness and resolve. Laura's attempts to manipulate the situation only strengthened my determination to see this through to the end. The final court hearing was scheduled for a few weeks later. Rebecca and I prepared meticulously, ensuring that every detail was accounted for. When the day arrived, I walked into the courtroom with a sense of purpose. The judge reviewed the final settlement, taking into account the newly discovered assets. "After careful consideration, I have determined that Mr. Green is entitled to 50% of the undisclosed assets. This includes all bank accounts, investments, and properties that were not previously disclosed." Laura's face fell, and I felt a mixture of relief and vindication. The judge's decision was fair, and it ensured that Laura would not benefit from her deceit. As we left the courtroom, Rebecca turned to me with a smile. "You did it, Jake. Justice was served." "Thank you, Rebecca. I couldn't have done it without you." With the legal battles finally behind me, I felt a sense of closure. Laura's attempts to deceive and manipulate had been thwarted, and I could finally move forward with my life. The journey had been long and painful, but it had also made me stronger. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I moved into a new apartment, started a new job, and began to reconnect with friends and family. The weight of the past was slowly lifting, and I felt a sense of hope for the future. One afternoon, as I was unpacking boxes in my new place, Mark stopped by to help. We worked in companionable silence for a while before he spoke up. "Jake, I'm proud of you. You went through hell and came out stronger." I smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude. "Thanks, Mark. It's been a tough journey, but I'm ready to move on." As we finished unpacking, I realized that I'd finally reached the end of a long and painful chapter. The legal battles, the betrayals, and the heartbreak were behind me. It was time to start anew, to build a life free from the shadows of the past. That evening, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, I reflected on everything that had happened. Laura's betrayal had been a devastating blow, but it had also taught me valuable lessons about resilience and strength. I had faced the storm and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever the future held. The journey wasn't over, but I knew I was ready for the next chapter. With the support of friends and family, and the determination to rebuild, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shadows of the past were fading, and the light of a new beginning was finally within reach. With the legal battles behind me and a new chapter of my life unfolding, I finally had time to focus on recovery and reflection. The journey had been long and arduous, but I knew it was crucial to take stock of everything that had happened and find a way to move forward with a clear mind and heart. I started by making my new apartment truly feel like home. Mark and a few other friends helped me paint the walls, assemble furniture, and decorate. As we worked, there was a sense of camaraderie and support that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a reminder that despite everything, I wasn't alone. One evening after a long day of moving boxes and setting up, Mark and I sat on the balcony, beers in hand, watching the city lights twinkle below. "You know, Jake, I've seen you go through some tough times," Mark said, taking a sip of his beer. "But I've never seen you this determined. It's inspiring." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest. "Thanks, Mark. It's been a rough journey, but I feel like I'm finally on the right path." "Do you ever think about what's next?" he asked, looking out at the city. "All the time," I admitted. "I want to focus on my career, rebuild my relationships, and maybe even start dating again when I'm ready." Mark raised his beer. "Here's to new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my bottle against his. With my home in order, I turned my attention to my career. I had started a new job at a tech company, a fresh start in a field I was passionate about. The work was challenging and engaging, and I threw myself into it with everything I had. It was a welcome distraction and a chance to prove to myself that I could still thrive professionally despite the personal turmoil. My colleagues were supportive, and I quickly made friends at work. There was a sense of excitement and possibility in the air, and I felt myself growing more confident and capable with each passing day. It wasn't just about the job, it was about reclaiming my sense of self and purpose. Outside of work, I reconnected with friends and family. They had been my rock through the toughest times, and it was important to show them how much I appreciated their support. I made an effort to spend more time with them, whether it was catching up over dinner, going on weekend hikes, or simply having a movie night at home. One weekend, I visited my parents, who lived a few hours away. We sat in the backyard, enjoying the warm afternoon sun. "Jake, it's so good to see you smiling again," my mom said, squeezing my hand. "We were so worried about you." "I know, Mom," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "But I'm doing better now, thanks to you and Dad." My dad nodded, a proud look in his eyes. "You've always been strong, Jake. We knew you'd come through this." Their words meant the world to me. They had seen me at my lowest, and knowing that they believed in me gave me the strength to keep pushing forward. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself thinking less and less about Laura and the pain she had caused. It wasn't that I had forgotten. It was that I was finally able to put it behind me and focus on the future. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and self-worth, and I was determined to carry those lessons with me as I moved forward. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I saw a notification from a dating app I had signed up for on a whim. I hesitated for a moment, then opened the app. There were a few messages from women who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. I took a deep breath and decided to give it a try. It was time to step out of my comfort zone and take a chance on finding happiness again. I started chatting with a woman named Rachel, who seemed kind, intelligent, and funny. We exchanged messages for a few weeks, getting to know each other better. Eventually, we decided to meet for coffee. I was nervous, but also excited. It felt like a big step, and I was ready to take it. When I arrived at the cafe, Rachel was already there, waiting with a warm smile. "Hi, Jake," she said, standing up to greet me. "Hi, Rachel," I replied, shaking her hand. "It's great to finally meet you in person." We spent the next few hours talking and laughing, sharing stories about our lives and discovering common interests. It was refreshing to connect with someone new, and I felt a genuine spark between us. As the date came to an end, Rachel looked at me with a smile. "I had a great time, Jake. I'd love to do this again sometime." "Me too," I said, feeling a sense of hope and excitement. "Let's do it again." Walking home that evening, I felt lighter than I had in a long time. It wasn't just about meeting someone new. It was about opening myself up to the possibility of happiness and love again. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and there would be ups and downs, but I was ready to take that journey. In the following weeks, Rachel and I went on several more dates. Each time I felt more comfortable and more hopeful about the future. She was understanding of my past and supportive of my journey, and I found myself growing more attached to her with each passing day. At the same time, I continued to focus on my personal growth. I took up new hobbies, like cooking and photography, finding joy in exploring new interests. I joined a local gym and started working out regularly, feeling stronger and healthier both physically and mentally. One evening, after a particularly intense workout session, I sat in the sauna, letting the heat relax my muscles. As I sat there, reflecting on the past year, I realized how far I had come. The pain and betrayal were still a part of my story, but they no longer defined me. I had faced my demons, fought through the darkness, and come out stronger on the other side. As the months passed, Rachel and I grew closer. We celebrated holidays together, took weekend trips, and supported each other through the ups and downs of life. It wasn't always easy, but it was real, and it was worth it. One sunny afternoon, as we walked hand in hand through a park, Rachel turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Jake, I know we've talked about our pasts a lot, but I want you to know something. You're one of the strongest, most resilient people I've ever met, and I'm grateful to have you in my life." Her words touched me deeply, and I squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Rachel. I feel the same way about you. You've brought so much light into my life." As we continued walking, I felt a sense of peace and contentment. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led me to a place of genuine happiness and fulfillment. I knew there would always be challenges, but I was ready to face them with Rachel by my side, and the support of my friends and family. The pain of the past had shaped me, but it had also made me stronger, and as I looked to the future, I felt a sense of excitement and possibility. This was my life, and I was ready to live it to the fullest, embracing every moment and looking forward to whatever lay ahead. The new year I arrived with a sense of renewal and hope. As the days grew longer and the cold gave way to the warmth of spring, I felt a renewed energy coursing through me. Life had changed drastically over the past year, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Rachel and I were now officially a couple, and our relationship continued to grow deeper. We shared more than just good times. We supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's successes. She became not only my partner, but also my confidant and best friend. I couldn't have asked for a better person to share this new chapter of my life with. One Saturday morning, Rachel and I decided to take a road trip to a nearby town known for its picturesque scenery and charming boutiques. As we drove along winding roads, we talked about our dreams and plans for the future. "Jake, have you ever thought about traveling more?" Rachel asked, glancing over at me with a smile. "There are so many places I'd love to explore with you." "I have," I replied, returning her smile. "I've always wanted to see more of the world. Maybe we could start planning some trips together." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "I'd love that. Where would you want to go first?" "Europe," I said without hesitation. "Italy, France, Spain. There's so much history and culture to experience." "Sounds perfect," Rachel agreed. "Let's make it happen." We spent the day exploring the town, visiting quaint shops, and enjoying a delicious lunch at a local cafe. As we walked hand in hand through the streets, I felt a sense of contentment and anticipation for the future. Rachel's presence in my life had brought so much joy and stability, and I was grateful for every moment we shared. Back at home, I continued to focus on my personal growth and career. My job at the tech company was thriving, and I had recently been promoted to a managerial position. It was a challenging role, but I relished the opportunity to lead a team and contribute to the company's success. The sense of accomplishment and purpose I felt at work was a testament to how far I had come since the dark days of my marriage to Laura. One evening, as I was reviewing a project proposal at my desk, I received a call from Mark. He sounded excited and asked if I could meet him at our favorite bar. "What's up, Mark?" I asked as I walked in and found him at a corner table. "Jake, you won't believe this," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "I've been offered a promotion at work. It's a huge opportunity, but it means relocating to the West Coast." "That's amazing news," I said, genuinely happy for him. "You deserve it, man. When do you have to make a decision?" "I've already accepted," Mark admitted. "I wanted to tell you in person. I'll be moving in a few months." We spent the evening celebrating his success and reminiscing about our years of friendship. While I was thrilled for Mark, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness at the thought of him moving away. He had been a constant presence in my life, especially during the toughest times, and I would miss him dearly. As the months went by, Mark's move became a reality. We threw him a farewell party, and I promised to visit him once he was settled. Though it was difficult to say goodbye, I knew this was an incredible opportunity for him, and I was proud of his achievements. Around the same time, Rachel and I decided to take our relationship to the next level. We began looking for a place to move in together, excited about the prospect of sharing a home. After weeks of searching, we found a beautiful apartment with a balcony overlooking a park. It felt like the perfect place to start our life together. Moving in with Rachel was a big step, but it felt right. We seamlessly blended our lives and routines, creating a harmonious and loving home. We spent our evenings cooking dinner together, watching movies, and planning future adventures. It was a new and fulfilling chapter, filled with love and mutual support. One weekend, we hosted a housewarming party for our friends and family. It was a wonderful gathering, filled with laughter, music, and good food. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people in my life and the journey that had brought me to this point. My parents were there, beaming with pride. "Jake, this place is beautiful," my mom said, hugging me. "You and Rachel have created such a warm and welcoming home." "Thanks, Mom," I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. "It means a lot to have you both here." Mark, who had flown in for the party, raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings and the incredible journey ahead for Jake and Rachel. Cheers!" "Cheers!" everyone echoed, raising their glasses. As the evening wound down and our guests began to leave, Rachel and I sat on the balcony, enjoying the quiet night. The city lights sparkled in the distance, and I felt a profound sense of peace. Jake, do you ever think about how far we've come? Rachel asked, resting her head on my shoulder. Every day, I replied, wrapping my arm around her. I'm so grateful for you and everything we've built together. She smiled, looking up at me. I love you, Jake. I love you too, Rachel, I said, kissing her gently. The months continued to pass, each one bringing new experiences and deeper connections. Rachel and I traveled to Europe, exploring the historic streets of Rome, the romantic canals of Venice, and the vibrant culture of Barcelona. It was everything we had dreamed of and more, and it brought us even closer together. Upon returning home, we resumed our busy lives, but we made a point to carve out time for each other. Whether it was a weekend getaway, a quiet dinner at home, or simply taking a walk in the park, we cherished our moments together. One day, as I was sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo album from my time with Laura. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to look through it. The memories felt distant, like a different lifetime. The pain and betrayal were still there, but they no longer had a hold on me. I had moved on, and my life was now filled with love, joy, and endless possibilities. Rachel found me sitting on the floor with the album in my lap. Are you okay? She asked, sitting down beside me. I am, I said, closing the album and placing it back in the box. It's part of my past, but it doesn't define my future. She smiled and took my hand. I'm proud of you, Jake. You've come so far. Thanks to you, I replied, squeezing her hand, and to everyone who supported me. As we sat there, I realized that the journey of healing and growth was ongoing. There would always be challenges, but I was ready to face them with the love and support of those around me. The future was bright and filled with promise. I had learned to let go of the past, embrace the present, and look forward to the future with hope and optimism. With Rachel by my side and a renewed sense of purpose, I knew that anything was possible. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had led me to a place of genuine happiness and fulfillment. The pain and betrayal were now distant memories, overshadowed by the love and joy that filled my life. I was ready to move forward, to embrace every moment, and to build a future filled with love, laughter, and endless adventures.